Brock Purdy isn't the only one evolving out here. Also, Steve Young's take of Brock Purdy is evolving as well. Again, we have been kind of chronicling Steve Young's assessment of Brock Purdy throughout the year and throughout his career up until this point. And we hit a point where Steve was like, okay, Brock is kind of plateaued, right? He is needs to be more. He needs to extend. He needs to be, a Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes type. And he was just saying this, I think, a week or two ago. And so, what I love about this is Steve is evolving as Brock is evolving. So, take a listen to what Steve has to say on his assessment of Brock Purdy. Take a listen right here.
So I wanted to ask you this to start off with, because we were talking a little bit about Brock this week and how he just keeps getting better and better and better. And I said, I don't know if you'll agree or say I'm crazy or whatever, but I said, okay, so you got Patrick Mahomes, you got Allen, and you got Lamar Jackson. And I said, those are the only three I would take ahead of Brock Purdy right now. And I said, well, maybe Burrow, possibly. I'd have to reconsider that. But the list is really shrinking for me the more I watch him play. Is that a complete over-exaggeration, or when you look at him, do you say, you know what, it's not fluky, and he's doing the things you need to do to win, and now, he's scrambling, he's getting first downs, like, he's just, it's just, this guy's really good, Steve, period.
Yeah. And I think, I think what's happening is you look at the game today, and you see a guy like Patrick Mahomes carrying all the water. You can just see it. The team's not that good. The game's kind of a downer. He figures out a way, right? When I say carry a lot of water, like, and Josh Allen does the same thing.
Yeah.
Plays Superman almost every week. And so, and then it's like, oh, Brock can't do that. And then you think about it as his game has matured, and he starts to, and he's way niftier. Like, I don't know if that's the right word, but
yeah,
it's like, it's just, he's starting to threaten. He's just certainly buying time, where you can. In that way, you're doing more. When I say take the carry the water analogy, he's carrying more water as he finds time, makes some more space. And then the next thing is, and I've said this all, since the Super Bowl last year, he now needs to threaten the line of scrimmage, and maybe more intentionally in a way, because all those yards are still there. So, and I didn't know he was so quick. I don't think he's going to beat anybody in a 40, but I guess he said the other day, my 10-yard split on the 40's faster than Debo's, and so
and McCaffrey.
The quickness. And so that quickness is the explosiveness that I think what you're saying, Tom, he carries a lot more water than I thought. And because what he does in the pocket and the play that's called, nobody in the league he would be, as good as anybody in the league. Call the play, run the play, get the most out of the play in the time frame. And then once it breaks down, that's when the Superman takes over, right? So we're Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, and if Justin Herbert ever got some help, C.J. Stroud. And so that's why people have tough time, including Brock, because he doesn't look. He even says, I'm not as fast, I'm not as strong, but he's quick, and he's smart, and now as he extends the plays and makes more happen, outside of the play call, he's already top of the game there, as he can extend. And then people are like, hey, wait a second. You're right, Tom. What are we saying about this? And so it's fun to see him. I would love to see him start spitting out 40 yards a game. Now, it doesn't always have to happen, but especially the big games, those first downs and touchdowns that he can go get. I'd love to see Kyle. He's such a great offensive mind. Get those inside the 10-yard line plays for Brock to end up with the ball in his hands, and make them or an option or something. He could do it. Put him in it. Put him in the spot, because in the biggest games of the year, championships, Super Bowl, big playoff game, big games in December, those will be decided by those kinds of plays at the end of the game instead of kicking field goals. And so
no doubt.
I'm big on that. But where you're going, this week was a kind of that didn't dawn on me. What I'm saying, it kind of grew on me that the things he was great at, I already knew he was great at. But the things that he needed to carry more water, I don't know if the analogy even works anymore, but I said it 5,000 times. he's starting to be able to do that, and I didn't know he could do that much, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah. Well, here's where it kind of jumped out at me, Steve, and I know this is a stat that you look at, but I was looking at his yards per attempt, and last year was 9.6, which is absurdly high. This year's 9.3. So we got a long way to go this year, 9.3. So I started looking at quarterbacks, and I came up with, God, I think it was Brady and Mahomes and Allen and Manning and you and Joe and Favre and Elway and probably 3 or 4 others. Aaron Rodgers was in there. There were only, I think, 4 or 5 other seasons, period, of the guys that I looked at that were over 9 yards per attempt. I think you led the league 5 times. Only one time were you at 9. I think Manning was at 9.2. I forget who else was. I think Joe was at 9.1. Somebody else, Aaron Rodgers was at 9.2. Brock was at 9.6. And it was like, man, alive. I mean, look at all these seasons of all these great quarterbacks where yards per attempt were 8.5, 8.6, which usually leads the league. Like when I looked at yours,
yes,
you were usually the league leader around 8.5 to 8.7.
Back then, there's nobody was in the 9s was unheard of.
9 is an absurd number, and to have 9.6, it's like okay. Like I'm not going to say he's in that group because he's not there yet, not at all. But all I'm trying to say is this guy's a lot better than people think he is. Even though he's been really good, he may be even better than that.
Yeah, and I think the hard part is he's set a standard now. Like a standard Brock game is 30 points and 80% completion and a couple touchdowns and no picks, and like he has a game like last week. You're like, it's okay, it's okay, But I think that's super cool that's where we are with him, and a lot of fun because I think one thing he's going to be able to, I don't care where you put him and any team in the league, if you ask him to get the most out of the play you just called from the huddle until someone has to break down or you have to break out of the pocket or whatever else, he will be the top of the game. So you're going to get really good play every game. You're not gonna, as I said even a year ago, you're not going to get those crazy 3 interceptions, balls flying all over the place. I'm bummed out. I don't know I'm not seeing things, and the bigger the game, it doesn't seem like his mind or his eyes get constricted, which is so common. And so in that way, I think the floor is much higher than what you thought. And now the thing you're asking is, what's the ceiling? Yeah. And I think we're like, well, maybe we need to just, I said a year ago, let him cook. Like, just don't worry about it. Like the floor is as high as anyone in the league, and now what's the ceiling? Let's let it play out. Let's let him cook and let's go. But but the hard part is if he starts to get into a phase where part of a season when he's not doing those amazing things, we're like, hey, what's wrong? Well, he's actually still above average, but we're going to hold him to this incredible run that's been going on. And is he going to extend from here? Is this actually the floor? What he's been doing. Like you're 9.6. It's like, oh yeah, no, I'm looking at 10. Who knows? I don't know. It's crazy.
Shout out to KBR, Tolbert and Copes for having Steve on every week. Honestly, I love this segment. It's the only appointment radio shows that exist for me. So I love listening to Steve every single week because I really do value his opinion. And we had identified that Steve was at a point where, yes, he believes Brock Purdy's a good quarterback and he thinks he's really, really good, but he wanted to see more. He wanted to see him transition into more of a definitive kind of quarterback in the sense of doing more than just executing the scheme. Because when you look at all the other quarterbacks across the league, they're scrambling, they're breaking outside the structure, they're creating, they're doing a lot of different things. And what I love about Steve is he's almost saying like he was surprised by what he saw from Brock Purdy versus the Patriots. And I think Brock, and we've talked about this on this channel this week when I did the live, the title of the live is Brock's Game is Evolving right in front of our eyes. And this is exactly what Steve is saying. He's seeing the same exact thing that we're seeing. He's seeing it the same way. He's seeing that, yes, Brock has been a phenomenal quarterback up until this point, but there's also this tier right now of elite quarterbacks, and Brock has kind of been hovering like right below it. But with more performances like what he did against the Patriots, what he did against the Rams, he's going to bust through that ceiling, and he is going to be firmly sitting in that elite category. Now, again, as I've said on my channel, you need the body of work. You need more of a reference point than just a game or two here or there. He needs to do it for a consistent period of time before we can really truthfully stamp it. But again, that's fine. I have no problems with that. And I've said that since early on in evaluating Brock is he's playing like an elite player, but we don't call players elite until we have a body of work to reference. I've said that like years ago about Brock Purdy. So we're still there. He's inching closer and closer and closer to that kind of tag. But again, need the body of work. And if he can do it all throughout the season like this, yeah, I think we'll be having that conversation for sure. But I do love to hear that Steve has absolutely like almost flabbergasted, like, because he's not that he's been doubting Brock, but he's kind of been like, I don't know if Brock can do that. And right here on KMBR, he's like, okay, I think Brock can do that. And he's kind of like, it's almost like he's like, I might have been wrong a little bit on Brock. And again, shout out to Steve, man. I love his analysis. I think he does a good job. I noticed a lot of people gave him flack last week for what he said about Brock, and saying that he's not in that tier of those other guys. And sure enough, Brock's second week in a row of just playing with I don't know how to describe it. It's an intangible quality where he is playing so phenomenally well. He's creating, he's escaping, he's making things up, he's getting first downs with his legs. He's doing things that aren't just within structure and within the structure of the play. It's when it breaks down. It's when you need it most. It's when you need a play. It's when you need a throw. And he's doing it downfield, and it's absolutely insane. At a certain point, what Brock is doing, considering where he was drafted. It really is. And so I love that Steve has come around. He's coming around, people. He's coming around. We talked about it with Steve right here. He considers himself to be the Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson type. And I think he kind of talked about Brock like in the category of like a Tom Brady or like a Joe Montana, more of like a in structure type of quarterback, plays within the scheme, things like that. And he's always talked about how the game has evolved away from that, and you need to be like Steve. I think Steve is like, okay, Brock's quicker than I expected. He's doing things that I didn't recognize that he had inside of him. I love it. I love it, man, because we're seeing the same thing. It's exactly what our film breakdown was about earlier this week. Steve seeing it. Feel pretty good about it, man. Brock is looking phenomenal. You guys let me know what you think about what Steve had to say. Do you see it the same way? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more updates.